Okay, so this is basically what I've just talked about. Everyone's affected. Make sure you're caring for yourself as at the same time that you're trying to care for others. And it's really important to understand the context that we're all in, which is really unprecedented. So psychological first aid, what exactly is it? Okay, this is actually a term. It refers to a method for helping people who are in distress so that they feel calm and supported to cope better with their own challenges. It's a method for helping someone manage their situation and make informed decisions. And it involves normalizing worry and other emotions that go along with times of crisis. The goals are fairly restricted, and this is important to keep in mind. The goals of psychological first aid interventions are to enhance the person's sense of control, try to reinforce good personal choices that they're making, good coping strategies that they're already using, and to encourage them to get support from other people in their social network and in their community. The goal is not to fix everyone's problems, okay? we can't solve the crisis for anyone else. But what we can do is hopefully make them feel better in the moment at their own ability to handle what's coming at them. So it's not fixing someone else's problems. It's not having all the answers. It's not an insight-oriented therapy. We don't try to interpret other people's reactions. Oh, I wonder if this is related to that time that, or, oh, do you think there's a link between this? No, no, none of that stuff. It's very concrete. It's very now. It's very focused. It's not psychotherapy. It's not psychological debriefing, which is actually a method used in some specialty forms of psychotherapy where you have the person describe all their thoughts and beliefs and their emotional reactions to a traumatic event. This is actually, we cancel against this type of intervention. It's not, please tell me how you're feeling and why and what you think it means. It's not like that because, in fact, that can be re-traumatizing. And I just keep thinking about, at the beginning of all this, having spent a lot of time listening to the news and people call-in shows on the news radio, and how personally distressing I found it to hear everyone else's distress. So we kind of want to avoid going into the details and re-traumatizing people as they return to those same feelings and dwell on them. So the core principles of psychological first aid are 3 L's: look, listen, and link, a cute acronym. Looking just means making sure that you give the person your full attention as you're helping them manage whatever issue it is that they're bringing to you. Shutting out other distractions as much as possible, really looking at their reactions, observing their behavior. It also involves listening then, and this is an active form of listening, meaning as the person's speaking, you're nodding, you're using your body language to communicate, caring, empathy, you're changing your tone of voice to really reflect that you're listening closely to what they're telling you and you're hearing what they're communicating. The last piece of it is, the last L is link, in which you offer practical assistance with problem solving, help to get access to basic needs, and you help them come up with solutions. But you work collaboratively really to come up with solutions for how to get access to further assistance. It might be offering information that you have about resources, where they can go for further help, and just sending them a link to that by email. These are all useful examples of how you can intervene. Generally, these kinds of conversations are when you have people calling into helplines, for example, or coming even in in-person situations, they're not meant to last more than 20-30 minutes. So that's the sort of scope of what we're trying to do here. We try to be very, identify problems in a brief way. What is the key issue? How are they feeling about it? How can we help them solve that and resolve what's going on for them? So some basic principles of communication, as I mentioned earlier: listening attentively, speaking slowly, clearly, calmly. Don't speak as quickly as I do. Modulate tone of voice, use affirmative nods, sounds and nods and things. oh yes, I hear what you're saying, this kind of thing. And basically acknowledging their feelings and acknowledging their understanding, reflecting back to them. So you're really feeling this. Or so you see that this is part of the issue. And so that kind of reflecting back and basically giving people in some cases an opportunity to vent their frustration. As in addition to feelings like sadness or anxiety, worry, we also have anger and frustration and resentment. All kinds of feelings could be expressed in the context of your time with the person. The links that I've given at the end of this presentation has tons of really cool, useful phrases. So when you're first getting started, or if you're interested, I don't know what to say, how could I put this? What is exactly the way to phrase it that is helpful and supportive? And they have a lot of useful tips for actual sentences that you can use. It might be acknowledging that you don't know the answer, but still helping them work through the problem. Like, I'm not sure I can answer that question for you. What are you thinking about when you have to make this decision? If you're interested, I can mail you a resource on what to do when you're in isolation that could find useful. Would you like me to do that? Asking questions about what, where, who, and when, if they need support in expressing their current situation, and a lot more like that you can find in the resources available later. What we try to avoid in psychological first aid is why questions. So why do you think this happened, or why did you feel this way, or why did that person say that thing? Those tend not to be helpful. Of course, some of these recommendations to avoid seem obvious, like don't exploit other people's trust or confidentiality. Don't share other people's stories or examples. Maybe that's less obvious, actually, because you might say, oh yeah, I know someone who had the same problem. No, that's not what you're there to do. You're here to hear their problem and help them cope with it themselves. We can't make false promises or false assurances. That's not a way that we can make it better. And just really, if the person wants a moment of silence to just gather their thoughts, making sure that they have time for that. So the link piece is really about assisting the person in getting access to information, credible sources of information, helping them problem solve ways for connecting with loved ones and social support. Sometimes very practical problems, how to get groceries delivered, accessing services and other help. And there's a bunch of recommendations in the material that you'll be able to see later as well. Things like trying to help the person set realistic goals to stay active, use of humor, accepting feelings as a normal reaction to an abnormal situation. That sounds familiar. And planning and sticking to a daily routine, making sure that you include time for self-care. Very, very specific and concrete. And maybe just one of these, okay? Not trying to do everything in a brief conversation. There are calming techniques that you can recommend, all kinds of things that you can do these yourself. You can offer them to someone else. There are all kinds of apps for this. There's a really great app right now on the web. This is also in the links at the end. There's a questionnaire that you go through and you answer questions about what emotions you're experiencing right now, and it makes a recommendation for a free downloadable app that will walk you through some of these principles and anxiety management techniques. But you can actually do those in the moment. If you're familiar yourself with some of these techniques, you can suggest it. Some cases you might want to refer for specialized psychological help. There's some more details about that in the documents that are referenced at the end, but we won't have a lot of time to go into these now. People who are maybe in imminent danger, experiencing violence, people with severe mental health conditions, where you might want to ask their permission to set you up with another source of help, a more specialized source of help. And the last thing to do, again, is always get consent to send any information that you want to send them. Summarize the key issues, including really reinforcing any positive actions they've already taken. emphasize what the future action is that they're going to do based on this phone call, and decide if a follow-up conversation is needed, and pick a time. Should I check back in with you next week? Do you want to feel free to check in with me in a couple days and see how things are going? That kind of finish, and wish them a good day. And that's the end. Phew. Okay.